Hello and welcome to this special report for the Daily Australian video edition. Trump tariffs force Dutton and Albanese to kick China out of Darwin Port. And Malcolm Turnbull is a two-faced liar. Welcome, Nationalists rejoice because they have just had an enormous victory here in Australia against the globalists. Peter Dutton has initiated a massive reversal of a decision made by the Turnbull government by demonstrably compromised or greedy former Trade Minister Andrew Robb, who first signed Australia up to the Trans-Pacific Partnership or the TPP, then retired from politics less than a week later in February of 2016. If that weren't bad enough, Robb became a highly paid consultant for the Chinese company Landbridge, who then secured a 99-year lease over the Darwin Port not 2 months after he retired from politics. The announcement by Dutton is enough to pique the interest of third-party policy supporters who by definition are anti-globalists, anti-WHO, anti-WEF and anti-United Nations. To explain the magnitude of the victory, it has prompted Anthony Albanese to copy Dutton's policy but claim he was already onto it. Check out this report from Sky News today.
Port that was leased to a Chinese company for 99 years will soon be back under Australian control. Peter Dutton says a coalition government will take back the Port of Darwin if it wins the federal election. But after getting wind of the opposition leader's announcement, the Prime Minister revealed he was already in negotiations to take the port back.
Local sporting clubs are not usually the place for major national security announcements. But the country Liberal Party's candidate in the Darwin seat of Solomon almost let the cat out of the bag at this event. Asked her view on the future of the Port of Darwin, Lisa Bayliss had this to say.
Well, look, I think I'll leave it to the Leader of the Opposition to make his announcement. I'm not going to jump in and make any early announcements around what's been discussed at a federal level.
So the Leader of the Opposition's planning an announcement as well?
That's not for me to comment on.
A few hours later, Mr Dutton confirmed he would be taking action on one of the country's most controversial assets. He says an elected Dutton coalition government will act in the national interest to immediately secure the Port of Darwin by facilitating the return of the port to an Australian government-approved operator. In 2015, the Northern Territory's country Liberal Party government leased the port for 99 years to Chinese company Landbridge in a move that raised concerns all the way to Washington. Outrage over the lease forced the Turnbull coalition government to change laws, so state and territory asset sales come under the Foreign Investment Review Board. Now, Mr Dutton says his government would appoint a specialist commercial advisor to work with the NT government to secure a new Commonwealth-approved owner. If that can't be done in 6 months, a Dutton government will use Commonwealth powers to compulsorily acquire the lease and pay Landbridge compensation. In the current geopolitical environment, it is vital that this piece of critical infrastructure, which is directly opposite to the Larrakia Defence Precinct, is operated by a trusted Commonwealth-approved entity. Debate about the port's future has been raging in the top end after Labor MP Luke Gosling last month told Sky News he was working to take the port back.
We can return that port to Australian hands where it always should be, and we can start to make the most of our strategic position in the Indo-Pacific.
The Prime Minister added to that speculation this week.
We wouldn't have flogged it off in the first place. That's the first point to make. I'll have more to say when over the course of this campaign.
After getting wind of Mr Dutton's announcement, the Prime Minister called into ABC Radio to reveal he was already in negotiations to take back the port.
The coalition making an announcement tomorrow that the coalition are going to say that they'll buy the lease back, but you're not making that announcement today.
You bet we will. We've been working on this issue for some time and trying to as well maximise the benefit for the Australian taxpayer. And that is why we've been working it through in a constructive way, making sure that we're in the strongest possible position and that we protect the Australian taxpayers' interests. What the coalition have now done is pretending that it had nothing to do with them at all and essentially following us.
let's unravel the whole story so that you, the viewer, can fully understand the treachery of our Uniparty globalist politicians on both sides and witness in real time the massive effects of the Trump tariff announcements and their immediate beneficial flow-on effects. Yes, we are winning. Andrew Robb was the Liberal Trade Minister who signed Australia up to the TPP on February 4th, 2016 in New Zealand. Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal signed in Auckland, February 4, 2016. Less than a week later, he announces his retirement from politics. February 11, 2016, the write-up in the paper, Andrew Robb to retire at the federal election. He served out his role as Trade Minister until the election of July that year before taking up a consultancy on September 2nd, 2016, less than 8 weeks after the election. The former Australian Trade Minister, Andrew Robb, walked straight out of Parliament and straight into an $880,000 a year job with a billionaire closely aligned to the Chinese Communist Party and its key trade policy. As part of the confidential consultancy deal, Robb, the architect of the China-Australia Free Trade Agreement, began consulting to Yi Cheng the day before the July 2 federal election in 2016. Robb got Malcolm Turnbull offside when he failed to notify him of his new role. This was an article published in The Guardian, the former Trade Minister's appointment as economic consultant with the company that runs Darwin Port, questioned by Labor and the Greens. According to the article, the former Trade Minister Andrew Robb did not talk to Malcolm Turnbull before taking on his role as the economic consultant with the Chinese company that operates the Darwin Port. Landbridge signed a $506 million agreement with the Northern Territory government in October of that year for a 99-year lease of the port. Robb's consultancy was reportedly announced by the Landbridge Group on the 2nd of September, 2 months after the 2nd of July election, at which Robb retired as the MP for Goldstein. Robb retired as Trade Minister in February of 2016. And so the decision by Robb to take up the $880,000 a year position put him at odds with the Turnbull government, who'd been forced to introduce foreign agents register in response to Labor Senator Sam Dastyari's resignation after revelations he was taking money to settle debts to Chinese interests. So how is the game played and how deep does it go? And why was Turnbull forced to go down this pathway? So for background, here is Dastyari Affairs Explained. Mr. Robb's intervention comes as Attorney General George Brandis moves to refer the embattled Labor Senator Dastyari to Parliament's Powerful Privileges Committee to investigate his ties to Chinese donors as part of Beijing's efforts to influence Australian politics. Senator Brandis has singled out Senator Dastyari's receipt of money from 2 Chinese businesses, disclosed on the Pecuniary Interest Register, to settle his private debts, and claims he asked 115 questions through the Senate estimates process, parroting Beijing's line on the South China Sea and other foreign policy and defence issues. The allegation contained in the letter is that Senator Dastyari appears to have engaged in conduct amounting to a serious breach of privilege, accepting payments he has to adapt the language of the privilege resolutions, limited his independence or freedom of action as a senator. Senator Brandis wrote Senate President Scott Ryan. Sam Dastyari retired as a senator on December 11th, 2017. He was only 34 years old at the time. Now, Malcolm Turnbull was forced into creating the Foreign Agents Register, but that did not stop Andrew Robb from accepting the $880,000 a year job. It did not stop Robb firing back at Malcolm Turnbull either when he was caught out. This headline appeared: Malcolm Turnbull says Andrew Robb's criticism was wrong on the Foreign Agents Register. Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, this is from December 8, 2017, just 3 days before Sam Dastyari retired or resigned from politics. Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull says former Trade Minister Andrew Robb has misunderstood the purpose of the proposed Foreign Agent Register after he complained he was being portrayed as a traitor because of his work for a Chinese company. Rob has reportedly written to ex-colleagues saying the linking of his name to the registration requirements had stoked a smear campaign that he was involved in treasonous activity through his work with Landbridge. As part of a crackdown on foreign interference in domestic politics, lobbyists acting on behalf of a foreign government, state-owned enterprise or business will need to register under the new Foreign Influence Transparency Scheme. Reporting in the Financial Review, I quote, "His appointment raises questions about whether his Landbridge role will contravene the Statement of Ministerial Standards, which states ministers should not lobby or advocate with the government for 18 months after their political retirement. It also states they should not take personal advantage of information that they had access to in their ministerial role." Asked whether Rob had spoken to him about the job, the Prime Minister said he had not raised his particular role with me, but went on to praise his former minister. And the praise reads like this: "Andrew Robb was an outstanding trade minister," Turnbull said. "I mean, it is hard to think of one that had more achievement. Those big free trade deals that he executed with Korea, Japan and China alone, extraordinary. Not to speak of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which of course awaits ratification. But Andrew's left the Parliament and he's pursuing a career." So at this point, we must pause and circle back to that quote, free trade, and what Trump tariffs have done. The tariffs have ended globalism in one fell strike of a pen. Suddenly, all countries have become nationalists again. The war against the globalists has been won without a single shot fired. Trump only announced reciprocal tariffs that were imposed against the US. So fast forward to the present, and what does Malcolm Turnbull have to say? As a reminder, Turnbull was the one who oversaw the sale of 80% of the land and a 99-year lease of the Darwin Port to China. He is explaining here to ABC's Sarah Ferguson that Trump tariffs actually advantage China. This is from March the 10th this year.
The US president took to his preferred social media platform, Truth Social, to criticise former Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull today. The president said Mr Turnbull never understood what was going on in China and was a, quote, weak and ineffective leader. The post was provoked apparently by Mr Turnbull saying Donald Trump's decisions and behaviour since taking office have benefited China's Xi Jinping. Former Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull joins me now. Malcolm Turnbull, welcome. What's the purpose of calling out Donald Trump's behaviour publicly?
Well, it's important that we are open to discussing these things. I mean, the reality is that Xi Jinping, China, will take advantage of Trump's chaotic behaviour and his harassing and bullying, seeking to extort allies, the way he has damaged the Western alliance. All of this erratic behaviour will be taken advantage of by China, because what China will do is they will say they'll be the opposite of Trump. Where Trump is erratic, they'll be consistent. Where Trump is rude and abusive, as you saw in that tweet, they'll be respectful. They'll play a very different game to what they did in the first Trump administration. So, you know, he's actively helping Putin in Ukraine, and perhaps not deliberately, but effectively, he's helping Xi Jinping.
What is it that Trump is doing that has become so egregious that you have to speak out?
Well, look around us. I mean, the impact Trump is having on the world, on the Western alliance, on markets, on our economies, I mean, these are matters that we have to talk about. We cannot continue this bipartisan gaslighting that is going on at the moment, where there are these massive changes in Washington affecting us and the whole world. I mean, look at the extraordinary treatment of Canada, efforts to basically cripple Canada's economy in order to bully them into becoming the 51st state. I mean, this is all unprecedented. But yet, if you look to our political leaders, there's nothing wrong with AUKUS, everything's fine, the relationship is fine, nothing's changed.
So what is a tariff? It is a tax charged by a foreign country on any good or service you wish to sell in their country. So a 25% tariff on a $40,000 car sold into another country means that that company is charged $10,000 up front to sell that car in the other country. So it automatically makes the car $50,000 without any other factors involved. But it also makes the country receiving the car $10,000 richer, and locally made cars gain a $10,000 price advantage because they attract no tariffs. What does that do? It makes local manufacturing more attractive as the balance shifts, therefore more jobs at home, good paying ones too. So here's the reality. Look at this chart of all the tariffs being charged, and you'll notice all the countries were collecting off US goods whilst the US was selling them tax-free at home, destroying local industry, but making the US a great place to shop for bargains. In turn, the US balance of payments was upside down, with massive government and foreign debt, and worse, a decaying society. But look at China and all other beneficiaries of US generosity, and they are booming with new infrastructure and building roads, fast trains, and much, much more. So how bad was the TPP? Let's hear from President Trump right now from his Liberation Day speech this week.
Never forget, every prediction our opponents made about trade for the last 30 years has been proven totally wrong. They were wrong about NAFTA. They were wrong about China. They were wrong about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which would have been a disaster if I didn't terminate it. If I didn't terminate that, United Auto Workers, you would have had no jobs in this country. You would have had no jobs. It was all going to other countries. In my first term, they said tariffs would crash the economy. Instead, we built the greatest economy in the history of the world. And again, I have great respect for President Xi of China, great respect for China, but they were taking tremendous advantage of us, and I commend them for that. I say, hey, if you can get away with it, that's okay.
As the balance of payments adjusts, American wealth will return. The obvious sign of the imbalance is decay and prosperity. The complaints will come via short-term myopic viewpoints, and no one mentions the elephant in the room. They are reciprocal tariffs, meaning everyone had an advantage over the US because of its dominance, which was strategically being eroded to make it fold into a one-world government structure. Those paying attention will know that this was always the final play of the globalists who infiltrated the US government to weaken and bankrupt America. That was exactly what the TPP was designed to do. No reason why. There you go. We can see who was involved. Fortress America is the resistance. The one country that happens to be a superpower is defeating the globalists in multiple ways by removing itself from all clutches. The WHO, the WEF, the United Nations, and all said free trade agreements. Those countries becoming 51st states stand to make the greatest gains. And communist Vietnam is the first surprise country to reach out. Check this out. Donald Trump just had a very productive call with To Lam, General Secretary of the Communist Party of Vietnam, who told me that just had a very productive call with To Lam, General Secretary of the Communist Party of Vietnam, who told me that Vietnam wants to cut their tariffs down to zero if they are able to make an agreement with the US. I thanked him on behalf of our country and said I look forward to a meeting in the near future. So where is Malcolm Turnbull now? Here he is, speaking at the National Press Club only this week.
We've got to start looking after ourselves. As I said, do you think if there was an Australian version of Donald Trump, do you think that that person would be tiptoeing around worrying about offending the United States? Of course not. He'd be standing up for Australia. And this is why I say I'm not saying I'm an admirer of Trump by any means, but, and this is one of the reasons people voted for him, because they felt that he was on their side, okay? And that's that's the challenge for our leaders.
So Malcolm Turnbull has become a nationalist. The war against the globalists is real. Without a single shot being fired, Trump has sunk them, and the proof in the pudding is in the eating, with China about to be kicked out of the Darwin Port, regardless of the outcome of the upcoming federal election here in Australia. There will be critics about the deal who will argue about the reversal and compensation being costly. Perhaps we could ask Donald Trump himself to cut that deal for us. Right, that'll prove who the better deal maker is. The revolution is a game of inches, but this is a mighty victory for those of us who know that globalism is the enemy. Thanks for watching this free report of the Daily Australian. If you wish to share, that'd be fair. If you wish to subscribe, even better. And on Substack, you can now commit to a voluntary paid subscription that helps reporting like this more often as we become the only news worth watching. Meantime, the Daily Australian radio show airs each weekday on X, Rumble, Substack, Facebook, YouTube and Podbean. And new episodes of my new show on anr.news called The 51st State launch each Wednesday. And this week's guest, the brilliant Lionel Nation, joining me. Lionel is an American syndicated radio, television and YouTube legal and media analyst. I hope to see you all on the next show.